Hi everyone. So speaker for today's Tech Talk session is Krishant Nanayakara. He will be speaking on AWS Big Data Landscape. So over to Krishant.
Thanks, Tirana. Good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about AWS Big Data Landscape, which basically is I would say, the introductory session, which is probably take 30 to 35 minutes. And just since big data is a hot topic these days, I thought, okay, to do this kind of session because it will help everyone to understand what big data does and what it's all about at the moment, especially in a cloud vendor like AWS. Probably it has some AWS terms and all stuff, but 50% session will be covering the concepts of the reference architectures, and then I'll move to AWS services and we'll talk about AWS services a little bit, not go into detail because I can't go into detail in this kind of a time frame because it takes a bit of time. So today's session is all about, identifying the key reference architecture concepts in the data lake design, and how we actually build a data lake using AWS. If you are going to have hands-on session, we can have separate sessions. I'm planning to do separate sessions on that afterwards, in future time. All right, let's continue. So the agenda is like a brief introduction to big data and how we are going. We started big data with open source. So what are the stacks what are the frameworks in big data that we can use in open source big data frameworks, and then how those frameworks evolve into a data lake reference architecture. In particularly in AWS, I'm going to talk about how we handle big data in AWS. So it's like 50% concepts, 50% AWS. I'm not straight away jump into AWS because then you will not get an idea what a data lake and what big data is all about. So I'll just run through a few conceptual stuff and then talk about AWS big data services. So if we talk about analytics, big data analytics, the need is as we become more digital society, the amount of data being created and collected is growing accelerating significantly. You know that. And when we talk about new enterprise applications, we deal with a lot of data. Probably you are not come across such highly loaded data applications, but in a typical, most of the large scale projects, enterprise applications, they deal with a lot of data, right? And so analysis of this ever-growing data becomes a challenge with traditional analytical tools. You must have heard about data warehousing. Data warehousing is a bit of an old concept, still there, but those days what we really did was we extracted RDBMS data, structural data to a data warehouse and pulled analytical data through data warehouses. So that concept is still there if you are heavily using RDBMS or structured data. But nowadays we deal with a lot of unstructured data, various kind of sources. So that's where the big data come to the picture, the data lake come to the picture. So it's actually a data lake is a concept which goes hands in hands with big data because it deals with unstructured and unstructured both. But if you talk about data warehouse, it talks only about structured data. That's the key difference. I have to set that initially because otherwise you may not understand the data lake reference architecture. So we need innovation to bridge this gap between data being generated and data that can be analyzed effectively. So that kind of innovation is called big data landscape, right? There are three main challenges when it comes to big data: variety, volume, and velocity. These are well-known 3 V's. Actually, if you come across any big data session, the first slide talks about these three. Actually, in any big data application, you find velocity. It means you have diversity of sources. There are multiple data sources, right? Not a single source. And volume is, it has to be large. Otherwise, it will not be a big data application, right? Volume means your data volume, right? Velocity is usually it's very high frequency. It's a real time mostly now. And it can be a batch or real time, but the frequency is high, not like those days. It's ever growing. You know about the mobile applications, streaming applications, video streaming. You know about these streaming applications. You get data all the time. So you can't handle such load in a typical enterprise data warehousing application. You need to have a bit of a high-end streaming application, which is the data lake and big data application, right? And what are those sources? We have social media links, mobile data, IoT devices. So we can see the graph. It is taken from IDC surveys, and you can see by 2020 the exponential of data that we are using, right? This is a bit of an old graph, but it still applies to 2020. I mean, you can see the exponential growth of data. So it means we are heavily using data at the moment, right? So in a typical big data application, it has a lot of data. Data must be in terabyte or petabytes. If you don't have such data frequency, such data volume, there's no point in talking about big data application. You can just apply whatever the other enterprise level tools that you are using. You don't need to worry about big data applications if you don't have this much of data. You can, but there's no point, right? So it should have more than one source, and processing load should be huge, right? It probably has a real-time streaming as well. It is not a must, but it's more usually, if it's a huge loader, it's a real-time stream. It should be highly scalable. You can't, because the data can be very low at a given point, very high at a given point. For example, during the day it is very high. In the night time it can be low. So you have to be scalable at any given point, right? You need to cater for analytics as well, right? So for example, and since I was involved with government projects those days, I had visibility of certain projects with other countries as done. So, and we were analyzing certain projects, so that's why I took the Singapore transport system, which has been active for a long time now. And it actually, what they do is actually monitor the traffic in the city and in the country. Everything is monitored. You know about Singapore, right? Not only Singapore, there are many advanced countries. They monitor everything, right? And so they monitor everything real time. They have a data lake in the middle, and then pull analytics out of that. You can pull analytics, you can using APIs or what kind of a mode, right? So these are the main three levels. Like you have data sources, then you have a data lake, then you pull data out of that. So with such kind of a system, you can real time you can get data. In Sri Lanka, if you take, we don't have such systems. Building such a system is not easy because, for example, why Sri Lanka can't adapt to that is because we don't have many backend services computerized, right? If you have backend services computerized, it's easy to get the data all the time. But at the moment, not only the backend data, we don't have systems in place to monitor, do the data source ingestions, and we don't have a data mart or data warehouse, or at least a data warehouse, or even a data lake to get those data. So first thing is to do such a system, you need to have a data lake built, and then you can easily pull out data out of that. So this is actually, this big data comes to the picture when you have such high frequency, high volume, high velocity aspect. So this is the example actually, just to give you a heads up that these are these kind of projects that you are dealing with when you do big data, right? So data collection happens at electronic eyes, linked data main systems, webcams, parking guidance systems, various kind of data sources. Processing happens at the real time at the integration night processing system, which is a data lake. And visualization can be anything, be portal, devices, smartphone, etc. Right? And in most of the governments in other countries, they have thing called open data, right? Open data is the data is given free to the people, citizens, and all other entities free of charge. They can pull out data from these data lakes, right? And give it to people for various things. They can build their own applications. They can, because the backend is with government, they can pull out data and give it to that. I mean, that's open data as a concept in most countries. It's not that popular in Sri Lanka, but you can make use of data lakes, open data as well. And so that's about overview of big data. And let's go to the big data pipeline. If you take a big data system, there are 4 layers. Just like our 3D architectures, those days we had 25 applications. We have 4 layers in a typical data lake reference architecture. These layers are ingestion, store, process, and visualize. Right? Usually in any data lake application, rather, have these 4 layers. And you need to be mindful, if you are an architect of data lake, you need to be mindful these layers are separated and decoupled. You should not integrate any of these, because sometimes if you take processing, the tool that you're using today might not be the tool you're using tomorrow. For example, in processing in big data, we use Hadoop those days. Now we hardly use Hadoop with MapReduce. We don't use MapReduce with Hive. Now we use Spark. So if you want to change the open source framework or whatever framework to to a different technology, different framework, you should be having that flexibility in your system to do that. So just like that, within the layer, outside the layer, should be able to decouple them. You know about the importance of decoupling in software. So just like that, you make sure that your these layers are decoupled. Ingestions, separate tools. Storing, separate tools. Processing, separate tools. Visualizing, separate tools. Sometimes certain tools can be done for both. For example, EMR can be shared. It can do processing. It can do sometimes certain visualization. If you take Kinesis, it can do ingestion. Sometimes do the processing as well. So like that, there are tools that can do both together, but even within those products, you find separate modules to do that. So make sure that your whatever tools that you're using, make sure they're separate, they're decoupled. For example, even if you do AWS Big Data setup, sometimes you can bypass certain AWS components and put open source stuff. For example, you can use Spark with AWS, or you can use Glue with AWS. You can replace Glue with Spark. So that option is there. So because sometimes the cost matters, sometimes people don't like certain tools in the AWS. So you can always, flexibility is there to replace certain AWS components with open source stuff. Because end of the day, all these are wrappers, right? And all these modules, these products in any services which in AWS are built on open source stuff, right? So that flexibility, the only thing is if you put open source stuff, you have to manage everything by yourself. But if you do AWS managed services, you do manageability is easy, scalability is easy, and all this stuff. So, but the cost is always a factor when you use cloud-based services. But end of the day, it's hassle-free and all that. You know about these concepts, right? And so that's about the big data and the big data pipeline. And then I'll talk a little bit of the open source stack. Probably you would have heard this Hadoop, right? This is not the very latest technology. It's been there for a while now. It's completely open source. This is where the big data started. Big data framework started with Hadoop. It had two main components, MapReduce and HDFS. HDFS is the storage, MapReduce is the processing. MapReduce is why they developed this is because there's a thing called parallel processing. In MapReduce, there's a thing called massive parallel processing concept, which basically does the processing parallelly. They divide your task into chunks and do the processing parallelly. And even HDFS, it does the storage parallelly. It has multiple copies and all stuff. So it's a completely new architecture catered to big data applications because there's high volume, high processing demand. So you always need to have a different kind of architecture to do that. This is what the Hadoop does. It does the parallel processing to do that task, right? So I don't want to go into detail how to, but this is kind of architecture. In a typical node level architecture, you find a master node and multiple cluster nodes, server nodes or cluster nodes, right? And in Hadoop, it's the same. There's a master node. There are multiple slave nodes, right? If you take EMR, the same architecture, slave is by cluster. So EMR is AWS version of Hadoop, right? And so just like that, there's a master node. There are multiple slave nodes. Slave nodes are the nodes which store your data. It does the processing. It can scale, right? It can scale depending on the demand, not the master node, the slave node. So this is kind of the very high level Hadoop architecture. And the MapReduce, it has its own way of processing. I said it's a massive parallel processing, and it has a thing called MapReduce Shuffle, right? I don't want to go into detail. Just remember, there's a thing called MapReduce Shuffle. They take all chunks. They have separate chunks. They do the processing separately. Then they merge each and every chunk together and have a aggregated version. That is called MapReduce, right? If you want, you can read about it later, right? HDFS storage again is it's stored in slave nodes, but you can see if you take this left side, you can see this data chunk is divided into 5 sections. Each portion has 3 copies, right? If you really look at the diagram, you can see 1 has 3 copies, 2 has 3 copies, 3 has, just like that. It's segregated. It's you don't have to worry about the failover. You don't have to worry about anything. Just you store the data in HDFS. You don't have to worry about scalability, loss of data, anything else. It manages by itself. And so, as I said, Hadoop came with MapReduce and HDFS initially. but it later added many components to that. It has a massive set of framework. You can't get to one page, and this is a diagram actually from the internet. Actually, this is also not complete, but there are multiple frameworks. Most of the key frameworks are Hive, HBase, and Spark. Right? Spark is not in the diagram. There are Zookeeper, Mahout. There are plenty. Pig. And it does various things, right? But the core is always MapReduce and HDFS, right? If I talk about few of them, Hive is actually it's running on MapReduce. Forget about Chess for the moment. Chess is a similar product of like MapReduce, but Hive is running on top of Reduce because MapReduce batch. When Hadoop came to the picture, it did only the batch, and But the thing is, if you had done my MapReduce programming. Initially it was Java, and if you are not familiar with Java, you can't do MapReduce programming because every function you have to code in Java, compile. It's a tedious task. As a person, I tried actually this a long time ago, and it was very tedious. That's why they came up with a language called Hive. It's a separate SQL language which can do SQL calls to the MapReduce, so you don't have to worry about writing MapReduce calls because. So if you are a non-Java programmer, still you can write code if you know about Hive. Hive is something similar to SQL. Just study the documentation and you can do that. Just like that, Pig. Pig is again another set of SQL. It's called Pig Latin, and it's similar to SQL again, but Pig is a bit outdated now. If I say Pig was replaced by Hive, just for SQL queries. So if you want to query the data using SQL. These are the frameworks that you can use. Forget about Pig that for the moment you can use Hive, right? But only problem is these are batch processing. You don't have the real-time capability with most of these frameworks. So that's why the Spark came to the picture. Spark gave you the interactability, real-time query with Hadoop. Earlier it was when you use Hive, you didn't have that interactive capability. It was a batch process. You request, you get it up sometime. But Spark is a real-time query business, and that's why Spark became very popular. And still people are using Spark in the open system. So that's like, and not only querying, it can do, sometimes it does a transformation, it does a ETL as well. So if you really want to learn about big data open source, Spark is the ideal framework to start. You don't worry too much about Hadoop, just learn Spark to get the hang of it, what it really does, right? And now I'll move to big data in AWS, right? That is the topic. As I said, I'll be talking about 50% open source and big data concepts. Then I'll move into AWS, right? And as I said, you know about AWS services. They're mostly managed and serverless products, right? If I read about this, it says AWS provides a broad platform of managed services to help you build, secure, and seamlessly scale end-to-end big data applications. So what any cloud vendor, any vendor who are with big data, actually what they do is they build wrappers. They make use of the open source frameworks. They build a nice wrapper with additional features. They aggregate many frameworks together. Sometimes they write their own frameworks and build it. AWS does the same thing. AWS is a magnificent cloud infrastructure architecture. So what they do is they are making sure they are using their cloud capabilities. They are having all these additional products using open source frameworks. They build a wrapper on top of it and build all these services. As I said, if you take Kinesis, it's built on Kafka. If you know about Kafka, it's all about Kinesis, right? And if you take Glue, it is built on Spark, right? So all are like that, right? And only thing is, by doing that, AWS will give you the managed services capability, sometimes serverless too, right? You don't have to worry about managing clusters. You don't have to worry about the load. You don't have, about this stuff, right? Have read about serverless. Have read about managed services. So even in big data services in cloud, same thing. They all are managed services, or sometimes they are serverless, right? And so you need to be mindful about that. If you talk about the big data stack in AWS, these are the key services, right? As I said initially, there are 4 layers in a big data pipeline: ingest, store, process, and visualize. So if you take ingestion part, there are these services in with AWS. And store, there are these services. Process, there are these services. Visualize. If you look at this diagram, actually, there are few services are missing in that. I didn't want to clutter the diagram. I just want to make sure to give you the main services. There are other services as well. For example, Elasticsearch is not there. So certain components are not there, right? But I have not added any open source stuff here. But sometimes when you develop a big data pipeline using AWS, you don't have to stick to only these services. These are all managed services by the AWS. But sometimes you can replace one of the components with open source stuff you want, right? Probably you can add Spark, right? You can add Spark with using PySpark or some other framework, some other language to write your own scripting, right? And so I have not added any open source stuff here because this is a big data session on AWS, not about open source stuff. But you can have a hybrid version as well. Just you have to be mindful about that. So you can see ingestion, they mainly use Kinesis, right? So if somebody is asked what Kinesis is, it's all about ingestion. The ingestion is you are loading data to the big data setup, right? It can be multiple sources, right? And it's real time. Kinesis is all about real time. There's a little bit lag in the firehose. But if you take Kinesis data streams, it's all real time, full time real time. There's no stopping there. If you take Kinesis firehose, there's a bit of, it's not real, it's not near real time. So you can do some processing with firehose, but with data source, it's a bit difficult, right? And MSK is a wrapper again to Kafka. If you know about Kafka, it's actually, if you want to use Kafka with AWS, there's a thing called manage Kafka. It's called manage stream for Kafka. So those are the frameworks that you can for ingestion. For storing, mainly we use S3, right? If somebody asks what is the storage in AWS data lake, is mainly S3. But you can use RDS and Dynamo for certain metadata if you want, right? But S3 is the main source of storage in AWS big data or data lake reference architectures. Processing, I mean, what does a processing do? Once you ingest data, you store somewhere. Then you need to you can do some processing. For example, if you take data from many resources, there can be many formats, there can be many data types, it's totally unstructured. That's the difference between a data lake and a data warehouse, right? If you take data warehouse, so you structure the data. But in a data lake, you don't structure data, you get everything into one place. So usually in S3, you can put anything, you know that, right? It is highly scalable, unlimited data store. So S3 is ideal for that. So what you do after that, you do some processing. For example, you can't just get unstructured data to your visualizers because it's not easy. So you need to do some processing. Sometimes you need to map data. Sometimes get some kind of a schema in place. That's where the processing comes to the picture. You do some processing based on the storage that you have. Mainly in S3, you do some processing. Those processing services are called Lambda. You can use Lambda, Glue, EMR, Redshift, and data analytics of Kinesis. Those are the main components. There are some more actually you can use, but these are the main stuff. But if you take the visualization is all about, having a dashboard, then you get a lot of nice graphs and all stuff. You can have real time. The beauty of data lake architecture is you can get real time dashboards. You ingest data, straight away you get the output from the dashboard. It keep on refreshing and all stuff. So you can't do that in a typical enterprise application what we usually develop. You can use the AWS QuickSight. It's a third-party app which is embedded to AWS now, but it's pretty cool. But if you want to read a real nice graph, you use QuickSight, but you can use Athena as well for some sort of querying. But Athena is not a reporting structure, but it's just a querying, right? I'll go into one by, but it depends on the time actually. But and this is typically this. If you know about this diagram, you can have a good understanding. Okay, so you get a project and you apply these services and read about it. I'm not going to go everything in detail. I'll be doing it in later sessions. But I need one session for each service. That's very. If you take Kinesis, it's 3 components, right? So it's quite deep. You need to understand their cluster management. You need to understand the components. You need to understand the optimization levels and all that. So it's quite deep. And so one session can't do all that. But if you understand this high-level architecture, what are the services that you can do at any given level in a data lake architecture, it's very, very good. So this side is very important, right? And So I'll run through this services very briefly, because I have only half an hour. I think I'm exceeding half an hour now. But I'll give you some insight about each and every service. I'll probably take 5 to 10 minutes and finish the session, right? So, as I explained initially, data lake is all about multiple sources and how you structure data and visualize them. So if you look at this picture, this is Sri Lanka in Muskelia. This came to my mind when I was thinking about data lake. It's not a lake, it's a reservoir actually, but you can call it a lake because you can see the 2 waterfalls there, right? I mean, these waterfalls are called data sources, right? Two streams, right? But everything falls into this lake. So no one's stopping it, right? So everything goes into this reservoir or lake. And so this is the data lake, right? You get multiple sources, people throw water into this lake, and there can be multiple sources, right? So data lake is more like a body of water in its natural state. Data flows from the streams to the lake. Users have access to the lake to examine, take samples, or dive in, right? So with this lake, you have plenty of data here coming from multiple sources. What you have to do is use this data for your own use. It can be, because everything is there. If you take a data warehouse, you don't find everything. But in a data lake, you find wanted, unwanted, unstructured, structured, everything. That is called data lake architecture, right? And in a typical data lake features, you find data lakes retain all data. It supports all the data. It supports all the user levels. Any user can use it, not only set of people, because everyone has something in that, right? Even the operational level people have something in that. Manager level, some people have something in that. The data lake can adapt to changes easily. For example, since it has everything, it's very agile, very, very agile, because you can do whatever you want. You are not structured. Just like NoSQL, you are not structured, right? I mean, you can do anything what you want. You can do shuffling of the data elements. You can go move around there and all that. And it can, since it's very agile, it can be fast insight. You are not stuck to a certain structure, right? And so as I explained, somebody asked you what is better, data lake or data warehouse, because data warehouse has been there for a long time. But what I would say, if you need both actually. Sometimes data lake can be cumbersome to do because it takes a lot of time to do such a project. It's not straightforward. It's not a 6-month project. You're doing a data lake is, I would say, 1.5 years project. If you do a real data lake project, right? It takes time. So what you have to do is, if you have data warehouse already, build a data lake alongside it and pump data from the data warehouse you have. Or you can pump data out from data lake plus warehouse, both together. It's a hybrid approach. So always what we say when you're doing digital transformation, we talk about microservices, right? We don't straight away scrap monolithics, right? We have microservices plus monolithic. Then we slowly move out of a monolithic, right? Just like that, have a hybrid model. Then you are through. Just don't think that you scrap your data warehouse and go to it. It never happens. You build a data lake alongside with data warehouse. Then slowly pull data from data lake. At one day, you can pull everything from the data lake. So that's called hybrid approach. Best practices, you need to know your data source really well. Discover first, schema later. Discover first means always don't think about the end result. When you design a data lake, get all your sources. Otherwise, there's no point of having a data lake, because data lake is all about multiple sources, right? Don't think about it. Just have everything in the data lake. Think about the schemas. I'll come to the schema in a bit, in 1 minute's time. You can build a schema also, but don't think about it, because I said all layers should be decoupled, right? Study them well. You need to study really well and improve your data. Improve your data means you need to, since you have multiple data, you can have multiple kind of relationships. So once you ingest your data to the data store, then after that you can study those data elements, and sometimes you can build a schema around it and pull data out of that, right? And you need to separate overlays. I talked about it. You need to apply security. Your data movements, you have to monitor data movements, and finally, the importance is don't over-engineer. Over-engineer is don't think about having a complete data lake at the first. Just think about it. It's an iterative process. You start with a few number of data sets, then keep on adding data sets and keep on defining your metadata source, then pull data out of that. It's an iterative process. You can't have 100% data lake initially, right? And So if you take a typical data lake architecture, and this is from AWS side actually, you have multiple components, right? And as I said, in the data lake, it's all about storing data and pulling data out of it. If you can see this diagram, and you put all the raw data into this. If you take this Eclipse in the middle, it's actually S3, right? So this typical AWS data lake architecture, S3 is the main storage, and you ingest data to S3 usually. So you put all raw data into that, and you can, because raw data doesn't have any meaning, right? You need to transform that data into a meaningful data. So for that, you need to have probably another S3 bucket. First bucket is the raw data bucket, the other one is the process bucket. Just like that, you can have multiple buckets if you want to enrich data. As finally, if you feel, okay, this is the bucket I really want for the final output, you can do that. This enriching part, which is transformation, the part is done through, there's a thing called Glue, right? Processing, you do some processing of data. You can have some sort of ETL process. ETL process, usually AWS ETL process is AWS Glue, right? You can do Glue transformation, or you use Lambda also if you want. And to do that, EMR also possible if it's a batch process. And so you can have these processing components to do certain transformations. From there, you can pull data to the visualize. This is the data typical reference architecture. What you understand is, initially what you have the raw data. Then you have enriched data. From raw data to enriched data usually happens to processing aspect. You need to do some processing. I mean, in typical architectures, it's also all real time, right? There's a little bit of latency when you do the processing, but it's negligible, right? So with this approach, you can build a nice data lake, but I'm saying it's not easy. The handling with data metadata stores are not easy, but can be done. It's a long process, but once you set the architecture properly, it's pretty cool, right? And so I don't know whether I have time, but there are multiple services. As I said, Kinesis is there. Kinesis is mainly related, I just run through them, huge scale of data ingestion. The ingestion happens through Kinesis. MSK is the Kafka version of ingestion. You can use either MSK or Kinesis, but mostly we use Kinesis. And Glue is the ETL, as I said. It does the ETL, which is transformation. And in Glue, which has a thing called Glue crawler and a Glue data catalog. I need to stress this point, the data catalog. What's the data catalog is, once you have multiple raw data ingested to your data lake, you need to have a data catalog, which is the one which is the unified data metadata, because you don't need everything. You have a lot of data in the data lake, but you don't need everything for your visualization. So defining your data schema in the middle, which is called a data catalog. This is the Glue does. Glue does this crawling. Crawling is how you ingest how you transform that data to a meta store. It's called data group crawlers. The jobs are called group crawlers. I mean, if you take Glue job, so those are defined by group crawlers, right? Read about them, right? And ETL, Glue ETL is what I said before. So you can write scripts. We are using Python or Scala, and but if you're using Spark, you can use PySpark. There are a lot of options. You don't have to stick to Glue. You can use Spark if you want. If you use Spark, you generally use PySpark, right? I have not mentioned that here. But EMR is the version of Hadoop. But if you have batch processes, Spark is all about real time. Batch process is all about batch it's not real, right? So you can use, if there are multiple batch processes, you can use EMR. The long time jobs, use EMR. If it's a real time small jobs, not real small jobs, real time jobs, use Spark or Glue, right? You understand these concepts. Now we have multiple components, just like your code pipeline. You have this called data pipeline. Code pipeline in that CI/CD is stitching all the components together. Just like the data pipeline, you also do the stitching all together. When you have multiple set of services, you need to stitch together. That data pipeline, that's the stitching part, right? Athena is, as I said, the visualization. It just says SQL query to the data lake. You can use SQL to query data lake metastore, right? And you can use Athena with Glue as well if you are using metastore for that. If you don't use metastore, you can directly call the data lake, but we generally use Glue to query, right? And finally, Redshift. It's a new component. As I said, but Redshift is not data lake. Redshift is a data warehouse, right? In AWS, data warehouse component is called Redshift. So as I said, if you want to maintain a data warehouse along with data lake, you can have Redshift also. So what you have to do is you can populate whatever using Glue crawlers, Glue metadata. You can pull data to the Redshift, and from there you can build a Redshift. Then from there you can do the visualization, right? And Redshift Spectrum is another thing. What it says is you can directly pull data from S3 rather than going through other components, right? And QuickSight is again a visualization. It's the most popular one for the visualization. If you really want to have a graph level dashboard, I think QuickSight is the best tool to use. Nothing else. You can otherwise if you going through open source, you can use Kibana. Right? You probably heard about Kibana. You can use that. So that's all about this. And if you have any questions, you can ask. Thank you. If you have any questions, just ask me offline. No, I don't know. I don't think you have time now. But what I have to do is this is the. As you know that this is my, I'm part of the big data track in 1 Billion Tech. So I thought of doing this session not only to talk about AWS, I took AWS to give some examples, something else, so some neat examples. I would have started with open source. It would have been a bit complicated if I started with open source, because open source stuff are usually complicated. And but it's not that complicated. But I thought of doing AWS because we have done projects in AWS in 1 Billion Tech. So I have that experience and prior experience doing it. So I have prior experience doing open source stuff as well. But I thought of starting in AWS with a little bit of conceptual idea at the beginning and give you what data lake is and what's the difference and what data pipeline is all about, and give an insight into that. And that's it all about. But going forward, I think I will be doing separate session for each and every service, and with examples, with demos. I didn't have any demo today because it's a theory session. And hopeful to meet you later. If you have any questions, you can still ask.
Okay, seems like no questions. So Thank you, Krishantha, for this knowledge adding session. Thank you everyone for taking part. Have a nice day.